Hello, good morning, happy afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this A-Level Philosophy 2026 question prediction video. Let's just get the preamble out of the way first. So this video is going out months early to patrons of my Patreon. If you are purchasing or downloading this video through a subscription, please do not share it beyond yourself, as these prediction videos make up a portion of my livelihood. I'm selling them. And so yeah, if you think they have value, which I think they do, please continue to allow them to be purchased by others rather than just distributing them freely. Yeah, I think that's all I need to say about that. It will be freely available to others. Don't worry if you're worried about other people closer to the exam. Right, let's dive into the predictions. All right, first up, as usual, epistemology. Guesses for epistemology for 2026. As usual, the shorter questions are harder to predict, harder to guess. The longer questions are easier to predict. But let's start at the top anyway. 3 markers are usually on some sort of definition. Very, very hard to guess because there's so many different definitions you could be asked about. Along this row is all the stuff that's been asked about before in A2, in A-level papers, not AS papers, but they don't really seem to factor into A2 questions that come up. And so it's kind of anyone's guess, but I'm going to go for, why not, something on infallibilism, because that's never appeared in the 3 marker, or maybe doubt, like the waves of doubt or something, different waves of doubt, Cartesian doubt. Moving on to 5 markers. So you'll see on the next 2 slides, with 5 markers, we're now looking really at what things have they not asked about yet in epistemology, because there's this rule apparently, which is that examiners need to make sure they're examining the whole of the specification. They can't repeat specific details, or at least not too much. So this is why it's actually quite straightforward to guess a fair amount of philosophy A-level questions. So we're basically looking at what hasn't come up yet. That includes the time lag criticism of direct realism has never been asked about yet in a short answer question, so that would make a lot of sense for a 5 marker, or the second part of a 12 marker. Also, we'll see criticisms of idealism. Lots of those haven't come up yet, so knowing those really well would be very sensible for the 2026 summer exam, May, June, whenever it is exam. I'm recording this quite a long time before the exam, that's why I don't have the date fixed in my mind at present. It will be fixed in it later. They've also not asked about Berkeley's distinction between primary and secondary qualities yet. So that would be a very sensible thing to come up. Doesn't guarantee these things will, but it just their likelihood is very high. This is what has made, if you care to look at previous videos on the YouTube channel, this is what has made previous predictions correct, is betting on something that's a high likelihood. So these have high likelihood. 12 marker, bit harder. Maybe Cartesian inductions. So we haven't had the intuition and deduction thesis for a while. So remember, this is Descartes' way of building his thought system up using deductions based on an original a priori intuition. To be honest, it could come up as a 25 marker because it hasn't appeared for a while, but if it wasn't in the 25 marker, again, could appear as a 12 marker. And these could be blended, although I suppose that'd be a bit of an unusually difficult question. Why not a response to skepticism about the reality of the external world? I'll talk more about those predictions in a minute on the next 2 slides and why I'm making them. But first, let's just talk about the 25 marker, because this is both simultaneously the easiest to guess, but also the most important to guess, because you're getting so many marks for your 25 marker if you're doing it well. My money this year would be on innatism, because it's been so long since we've had innatism. Or, like I just mentioned, the intuition and deduction thesis. Doesn't mean it won't be anything else. The examiners do occasionally repeat things from 2 years ago. They never repeat something from 1 year ago. So they would be completely breaking with pattern and tradition to ask about indirect realism. Or to be honest, really, They've never done a 2-year repeat on theories of perception. So that kind of rules out any theory of perception 25 marker at all, which leaves you all these ones. So JTB, but it's been quite recent, only 2 years ago. Philosophical skepticism, well, that is to do with theories of perception, if you think about it. Intuition and deduction thesis, so that's why that comes in at second. Idealism is a theory of perception, so is direct realism. Oh, sorry, those were adjacent. So it is possible. It's just unlikely if you look at things. So yeah, I guess a distant third would be, or a third would be idealism, then direct realism, or that would be very odd to do indirect realism and then direct realism because they're so similar. Highly unlikely. So maybe idealism is a third guess. But then innate ideas has been so long ago. Little extra tip on innate ideas: there is somewhere out there on the internet a perfect answer, or so, you know, as close to perfect model answer as you can get from AQA, like an exemplar answer. The link, I believe, is in another one of my videos. In any case, I will be making at some point, hopefully soon, a video going through that exemplar answer, which it would be very useful to watch if innatism does come up. So that will be available at some point to purchase from my Patreon as well as an individual video, or if you are subscribed, it's coming soon. So there's a bit of a backlog of videos to upload to fulfill my my commitments on the Patreon. Apologies that there's been a bit of a delay, just busyness teaching, but the videos are coming. So those are straightforward predictions for epistemology. Let's see why with the shorter answer questions. Okay, so the reason I've predicted some of these things is because here are the epistemology specification areas that have not yet come up in any shorter exam question in the exam. So these are high likelihood to come up, and it's all the stuff I've mentioned: infallibilism, direct realism, and time lag. Indirect realism leads to skepticism about the external world. Oh my days, misspelt. No, it was misspelt on the previous page, sorry. It was Berkeley Card on the previous page. This is how you spell Bishop Berkeley's actual name. Apologies for that. His attack on primary and secondary qualities, that distinction. They haven't done, these criticisms of idealism, illusion, hallucination, and solipsism. We haven't had Plato and Leibniz's arguments for innate ideas, but if that is what the 25 marker is, it won't be a shorter answer question on any of on that, because they don't repeat topics across questions within particular exams. Descartes' deductions, so intuition and deduction thesis as a short question. Some of the later deductions of those in those have not yet come up. They haven't asked about the first and second waves of doubt. They've asked about the third, but not the first and second specifically. And Descartes and empiricist responses to skepticism. So yeah, quite a lot of stuff they haven't asked about yet, and they need to cover all of the specification in the exams as the years pass. So these are the things most likely to come up. Local versus global skepticism is here because this was on the list last year. So actually they only crossed one thing off last year, which shows a bit of repetition, but still this is a numbers game. This is a probabilities game. So still revise everything. It makes sense to revise everything, but it makes sense to particularly concentrate on these things for epistemology for short answer questions, i.e. non-25 mark questions, because they have the highest likelihood of coming up. And I've said, you know, this for a 3 marker, this for a potential 12 marker, and so on, but really they're interchangeable, because nature of philosophy exam, you could ask a 3 marker question or a 5 marker or a 12 marker on virtually any of these. It just depends how you phrase it, which particular specific bit you're picking out. So don't get too religious or worried about what specific type of question. I'm just saying short answer questions here. It could be that it's like a 12 marker on infallibilism, or JTB plus infallibilism response would be a very sensible 12 mark question, and it's a 3 marker on the intuition and deduction thesis, say. Okay, so they could come in any of the short answer questions. Let's keep going. Right, this brings us to ethics. Actually, yeah, in this video, so I'm just going to do paper 1, because that's what I normally do, and then there'll be another paper 2 video coming as well. For ethics, what can we say? Yeah, similar business. There's more areas of ethics that have not yet come up in any of the exam papers at all. Hence this very broad prediction. Any criticism not covered already, but I'm not just leaving you with that. It also says see next slide. Okay, so we'll talk more about that in a sec. But yeah, guesses. Harder to predict, to repeat myself, but a 3-marker. Why not hedonistic or non-hedonistic utilitarianism? That's kind of a random guess because there's so much, but that seems like a sensible thing. They have to ask that at some point because it's such a nice, easy, straightforward distinction to ask about. Now, this is better though. This is more specific. They've done categorical imperative formulation 1, but they've never yet done a short answer question on categorical imperative formulation 2. So that also has to appear at some point, and that's very high likelihood to appear in the 2026 exam. Again, doesn't mean it definitely will, but we're playing the numbers game here. So it would be very worth knowing the categorical imperative second formulation inside out. Talk about this one in a bit. And yeah, 12 markers. So the pattern with moral philosophy 12 markers is most often it's applied ethic question, e.g. in the an applied ethics question. Kant and lying, 2019, Aristotle simulated killing, bit of a rogue in 2020, so it could be something else in 2026. Also in 2021, it was just, both of those were just, sorry, for 3 years in a row, actually, I apologize. It was an aspect of a theory and then a criticism of a theory. So actually, yeah, fair enough. It seems to be either that or an applied ethics question. But look, in 2023, it went back to applied ethics. So Kant and stealing, Kant and simulated killing, and then, yeah, a bit of Kant's first formulation. So that's come up a couple of times now. Don't think they're going to ask about that in 2026. And the criticism that not all universalizable maxims are moral. Therefore, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So actually, okay, it's half and half. Half the time in the 12 marker, they've asked about an aspect of a theory and a criticism of it. Half the time, it's been an applied ethics question. So my guess is, if it's an applied ethics question, they haven't done meat yet. So this is the glaring omission from the ethics exam so far. At some point, they have to ask about eating meat. Utilitarianism is probably the nicest theory to ask about in relation to eating meat. So my strongest guess prediction would be for utilitarianism plus eating meat. This is why you need to listen to the commentary of the videos and not just look at the tables. Or it could be another applied area, but that's highest likelihood. If it's aspect of a theory plus a criticism, perhaps golden mean. That hasn't come up yet. That seems like a key thing to ask about. Or phronesis, so something virtue ethics-y perhaps, is my guess. Now, 25 marker, most likely to be based on what's come before and when it's come before Kantian ethics. Because we had meta-ethics last year, then utilitarianism, then virtue ethics, then anti-realism, so meta-ethics again, and then Kant. So it's been ages since Kant, so most likely to be Kant. They seem to like virtue ethics though, so we had only a 2-year gap before virtue ethics came up for a second time. They've asked about utilitarianism 3 times, so I don't see how they can ask about utilitarianism in 2026. It would be very surprising to be asking about it again. Not impossible, but very surprising. And I've put question mark, exclamation mark next to applied ethics. For a number of years, I was predicting an applied ethics 25 marker because there are examples of it in the most commonly used textbook, the Cardinal Hayward Jones textbook, which seems to have, there seems to be, some of those people seem to have influence on the examiners or be examiners. However, they have just never asked about an applied ethics. So I've given up, an applied ethics 25 marker. I've given up predicting an applied ethics 25 marker. It doesn't seem like they're going to do it. I think it's because it's too difficult. It's more of a university question. So don't worry about those ones. That's like, is stealing wrong? Question mark, 25 marks. Is lying wrong? Is it okay to eat meat? Don't worry about those. I think Kant or virtue. Yeah, it's got to be one of those two, I think. So I would have essay plans prepared for those. See my other ethics videos on YouTube for tips on how to prepare for those. One more slide, I think. Yeah, 2 more slides, in fact, because here's all the stuff they haven't asked about yet for a short answer question in moral philosophy. And as you can see, it's absolutely tons. This is why it's very difficult to really predict these, although second formulation of the categorical imperative seems obvious to me. If I was setting it, I'd set that. Last year they crossed off these ones, got those out of the way, but there's still an absolute ton because there's the next slide as well. Let's look at the next slide too. Yeah, there's all these criticisms of theories, because there's so much on the ethics specification. So really there's just quite a lot to learn and revise. I can't really help you too much with the short answer questions in what to zero in on. Just, yeah, make sure you revise it all. Watch my ethics video on YouTube, which is free if it's helpful. And again, be aware if my predictions for the short answer questions are correct, then as I said about epistemology, I might have got the content right, but they'll be in the wrong places. It might be what I said is a 3 marker is actually a 12 marker, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. Okay, hope that's helpful. If you've got any particular questions, especially if you're a patron, use your direct line to me, comment on the video or send me a message through Patreon if you've got any particular questions or things you want help with, because you are paying for a service there on Patreon. If you're watching later on YouTube, the free version, feel free to write comments, but I'm less likely to get back to them, at least in good time. Good luck with the exam. God luck with the exam. Have fun, and take care out there. See you next time.